Meeting is very important, including that face-to-face with Xi Jinping. Tomorrow, the stakes high as can be. So what does this mean for Canada's broad trade strategy? Well, Gil Lan is an associate professor at the Toronto Metropolitan University, and he joins us now. Professor, thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you for having on.
It's a difficult line that the Prime Minister is walking right now, isn't it?
Very, very difficult. Many different things to balance, especially as mentioned before on your show about the different interests of the different provinces involved.
And how can he do it? Do you think? Is it? I mean, he wants to bring in new business. Great. He wants to appease the provinces, all of them, if he can. And then he's got Donald Trump to the south of him that I don't know if you want to appease or if you can appease, but you have to deal with him.
Well, I think there's a couple of points. This is an opportune time for the Prime Minister. With respect to the electric vehicles, which is first and foremost upon the Chinese government's mind, the European Union has actually set an example for us. The European Union has also imposed tariffs against Chinese electric vehicles, not as high as Canada. They did a proper subsidy investigation. And they just recently, a couple of days ago, came into informal agreement where if the Chinese manufacturers would propose a minimum price which would offset any perceived subsidy, that perhaps if those vehicles could go into the EU without a tariff. Canada imposed tariffs at 100% without much of an investigation, presumably following the United States. So there is a mid-path that Prime Minister Carney could follow, just simply follow the EU, reduce those tariffs to whatever subsidy level Canada thinks it is, and then see whether or not it can just do the same thing that the EU is doing. That would perhaps make the Chinese government happy, as well as it wouldn't be giving everything away. It wouldn't be putting Canadians at a disadvantage. It would simply be leveling the playing field for Canadian manufacturers so that they're able to compete fairly and innovate and be efficient.
Do we know what the European numbers are, the base prices?
No, at this point, right now, they're still at the rough stages of it. Although they signed this informal agreement, but there will be proposed minimal prices, and then the European Union will have to see whether it approves them. But it certainly gets the ball rolling forward. You have concrete, proposal on the table that with official acknowledgments by both sides.
Now, I mean, it's one thing for the European Union to do that. They don't have Trump getting ready for negotiations with CUSMA, which he said, he's now said maybe we don't need it. We don't need Canadian cars. What kind of a reaction do you think that would garner from Trump if we were to say, you know what, we're going to lower the tariffs?
Well, I think it's very important that Canada not unnecessarily anger Trump, President Trump, but Canada's economic sovereignty is on the line, and diversification with our trade partners is necessary. So it may anger President Trump. At this point, I'm not sure whether not angering him would make much of a difference. But if there is an opportune time, this would be it, because the United States and China recently came to an informal truce in November, where they are relaxing export controls. There's been relaxation of the retaliatory tariffs. So given that there's a lull in the tensions between the United States and China, this is probably the better time, if at all any, for Canada to be approaching China, because for the United States to express its anger over Canada engaging with China might actually also disturb its very truce that it has with China right now. So this would be not necessarily a perfect time, but maybe one of the best times.
Could you see Canada coming back with a deal with on the EV or some kind of an MOU, and the same with canola from this meeting? I mean, we saw that the Premier, Scott Moe, was there from Saskatchewan, went for some of these meetings. Could we see something actually move on those two things?
I think that's a realistic possibility. China filed a WTO complaint against Canada. And as I mentioned before, Canada didn't really follow the same type of rigorous WTO subsidy investigation. And 100%, it's hard to imagine that the EU would be that off. Their estimations were anywhere between, I believe, 7 to 8%, all the way up to 35%. So the future road where this is leading is perhaps a loss for Canada at the WTO court. And Canada has been a professed supporter of multilateralism. It would no doubt have to follow that ruling in order not to lose legitimacy amongst its partners that it wants to diversify trade with. So at that point, it would have no choice but to either get rid of the tariffs or to lower them down to subsidy levels, the exact same level at where the EU is at. So if I'm sure that must be on the radar of the Canadian government, where this path inevitably leads. So it would not be surprising if they try to come to some sort of deal, but very similar to what is going on with the EU. It's a very nice middle path compromise.
And if we do have deals like this heading into CUSMA, does this give us more of a position of strength, or are we in a weaker spot when it comes to negotiating CUSMA?
I think any diversification of Canada's risks, including with its trade, having more trade partners, puts Canada in a stronger position.
And what do you see with? I mean, as I mentioned earlier, we're talking about Trump saying we don't need CUSMA, we don't need Canadian cars. Do you see the negotiations happening? Do you see CUSMA surviving this, or maybe breaking it down into two different agreements, one with the U.S. and one with Mexico?
This one is really hard to tell. There's so many moving parts going on here. A lot of that will depend upon how the United States decides to treat Mexico and whether it decides to treat Mexico differently from Canada. If it does, then having CUSMA would not make sense from their point of view, their perspective. It would certainly be in line with their current strategy of negotiating bilateral agreements to maximize as much of their negotiating leverage. So in short, maybe there might be an attempt to do a free trade agreement with Canada and a free trade agreement with Mexico with different terms and conditions for each one of them. So anything's possible. And to me, that would be the most likely path if the United States were to continue on this very aggressive trade path that it's been taking.
Okay, we have to wrap it up there, but Professor, thanks as always for joining us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
Gil Lan is an associate professor at Toronto Metropolitan University.